Take your Bible out, turn to 1 John chapter 3. And we will go through chapter 3 this morning. And the title of the message this morning is Time Will Tell. Because as I've asked you 3 questions, are you in or out? Obedient or no? Are you sure? The 4th message this morning is Time Will Tell. We're going to finish out in 1 John chapter 3 because there are so many things that really just wrap up and encapsulate the entire weekend. And so just like I did last night, instead of me reading this entire text first, we just go through the text essentially verse by verse, but not really. We'll take it chunks at a time. So we are going to first focus on verses 1 and 2. And as we jump in this morning, I'm going to go back to the end of chapter 2 and then go into the beginning of chapter 1 just to recap what we said last night. So verse 28 of chapter 2 says, "And now, little children, abide in him," that is Jesus, "so that when he appears, we may have confidence and not shrink back from him in shame that is coming. If you know that he is righteous, you may be sure that everyone who practices righteousness has been born of him." I want to remind you that the bold confidence that John wants us to have is a confidence in understanding that if our root is in the Lord, then our fruit will then bear witness to the fact that we know him. If our fruit is bearing witness to the fact that we know him, then ultimately everybody will see an apple tree. Here's the thing that I need you to know this morning and understand. I love what Katie just announced. Please go to that. At the same time, not at the same time as if I'm going to disagree with that. I'm going to add to that. There are many of us who think we have to be equipped to know something special to be able to interact with the lost. I want to communicate something to you. Nothing can deny your story. At the end of the day, if you know Jesus, you can tell people you know Jesus, and you can talk about knowing Jesus. You can talk about your relationship with the Lord. They can't deny that. The woman at the well, when she meets Jesus, she goes back into the town and she just tells her story. She doesn't stop by to go to the Elon Seminary, get trained for 4 years, and then come back in the Samaria and say, "Hey, look at me, I know everything." No, she just goes from meeting Jesus, who told her she slept with a lot of people, and then she goes back and says, "Look, me. I met Jesus." Not that she was that inarticulate. I'm just saying, it didn't matter because she told her story. She told her story. People were changed by the reality that they went to go see Jesus for themselves. You don't have to be the most intelligent person to share the gospel. All you can do is have a bold confidence that you know Jesus. If you know Jesus, you can talk about knowing Jesus. Am I making sense to everybody? Cool. So as we jump into chapter 3, John is hinging everything in, at least the first part of chapter 3, on this confidence that when Jesus comes, if you know him, you need not be ashamed because you know him. And so this is what he says. "See what kind of love the Father has given us that we should be called children of God." I've got to pause. You've been told a lie most of your life, and it happens on television all the time. People will say stuff like, we all God's children. That's not true. That's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible says we're all God's creation. We're made in the image of God. And God's children are only those who trust in Jesus. If you don't trust in Jesus, you're not God's child. As a matter of fact, the Bible says in Hebrews chapter 12, he disciplines those he loves as sons. But the reality is, not everybody is a child of God. Everybody is God's creation. The only children God has, the only children God recognizes, are those who have rested the weight of who they are in the finished work of Jesus Christ. If you haven't done that, you're not God's child. You're just his creation. Am I making sense to everybody? So, when John is talking about children of God, he's not talking about the whole world. He's talking about those of us who have named Jesus. Now let me go ahead and say this too. If you're not a Christian in this room still, I'm not talking to you right now. And neither is John. John is only talking to those who are believers, those who have trusted Jesus for the salvation of their sin, or forgiveness of their sin, and life everlasting. And so he says that we should be called the children of God, and so we are. The reason why the world does not know us, now that's interesting, isn't it? He says the world doesn't know us. What does that do? That delineates. There are some people who are children of God, that's us, and there are people who aren't. Who is that? That's the world. What did he say in chapter 2? Don't love the world, nor the things that are in the world. He's not saying don't love the people that are in the world. What he's saying is don't love the world system that controls them to believe that God's not who he says he is. But he allows us to know we are that. The reason why the world does not know us is because it did not know him. Beloved, he calls us. We are God's chosen. I'm sorry, not chosen children. Beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared, but we know that when he appears, we will be like him because we will see him as he is. And everyone who has this hope in him purifies himself just as he is pure. Here's point number 1 and point number 2 going together. Point number 1, Time will tell if we look at the love. Because that's what he says. See what manner of love, see what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called the children of God. God loved us enough to send his only Son in order that we might be called children of God, that God might be able to accept us, and not only accept us, but then make us right in his sight. And in making us right in his sight, I don't have to have the world accept me. There are many of us that are living for the approval of the world. There are many of us that are just, my wife and I were talking this morning about how people want to be seen. And how when you go to a beach, for whatever reason, people want to be seen as attractive. And I looked at my wife and I was like, because we saw a woman that was dressed a certain way this morning, and so it precipitated some conversation. But I was like, so what's the goal? I mean, what is the end of that? So somebody thinks you're attractive. To what end? So even if you are you hoping somebody comes up to you and says something? Are you hoping that somebody does something? Like, what is the end goal of that thought? So my wife looked at me and she said, honestly, there is no end goal to that thought. Sometimes we just want to be thought of as attractive or thought of as somebody special. The reality is God already thinks that about you. That's why he shaped you the way that he shaped you. And we fight so hard to look like somebody else when ultimately God made you the way that he wanted you to be. So that being the case, we can find great approval in him if we look at the love. Number two, if we practice with purity. So when the Bible says everyone who has this hope purifies himself as he is pure, it is not the idea that I then make myself clean. The Greek word is a Greek word that's used all the time to talk about purity, but there are two Greek words to talk about purity. One of them is katharos, which is where we get the name Catherine from, and it just means clean. The other one is hagios or hagnos, which is here, which means to set yourself apart or to separate yourself. In other words, if you have hope in heaven, and that's where all of your citizenship is, Philippians chapter 3, verse 20, then instead of putting all of your emphasis in this world, put all of your emphasis in the next one. This world is going to pass away. So don't live for this one, because it's going to pass away. Am I making sense to everybody? Wouldn't it be crazy? How many of y'all still live on campus? Anybody still live on campus? Most of you still live on campus. Great. How many of y'all live off campus and plan to continue to live there 20 years from now? Oh, snap. All of y'all were like, look at that 20 years, what's wrong with you? Living there? Then follow my analogy. If you started setting up shop in your dorm room like it would be your house forever, wouldn't that be crazy? I mean, wouldn't your roommate look at you and be like, you know that you're not living here next year, right? Like, I'm here to tell you the same thing with Earth. I know it's a little bit longer of a stint, but the reality is this isn't where you land. Like, this isn't it. So you might live for 80, 90, maybe 120 years. Still, you got all of eternity. Like, this isn't it. This is like your dorm room. I mean, I'm going to the airport today to fly back to Pennsylvania. If I went to the airport and I set up shop like airport was home, somebody would arrest me, I'm sure. Because it's just an airport. It's just a small stint to get me to another destination, and Earth is the same way. So he or her who has that hope, him or her who has that hope, purifies themselves just as Jesus is pure, sets themselves apart, does not live for this world, does not find their identity in the things of this earth. They look forward to that place that's coming next. The Bible then says these words, everyone who makes a practice of sinning also practices lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness. He says, you know that he appeared, that is Jesus, in order to take away sins, and in him there is no sin. Here's the beauty of the gospel. God is not okay with sin. He hated it enough to kill his son over it. God's not okay with sin in your life, and he's not okay with sin in my life. So what are we to do with our sin? What we're to do is what he said in chapter 1, confess our sin. But then also allow him to shape us in such a way that he removes sin from our life. And there are many of us who are sitting in this room going, well, can he do that? Well, he God, so if he couldn't, he wouldn't be God. The question is, are we willing to allow him to draw us to himself in such a way that he begins to just move stuff out of the way? And if that's what we're longing for, if that's what we're looking for, God will do that. But you better be careful. Because when you say, Lord, I want you to shape me more into the image of Jesus Christ, I want to remind you who Jesus was. We were talking about this a little bit last night. Jesus was born in Nazareth. He was born to a pregnant teen girl named Mary. Granted, Joseph was not his earthly father, but the community didn't know that. So to the community, Mary just looks like a pregnant teen. To the community, Jesus is born in Nazareth, which is not the cleanest place in the world. As a matter of fact, what's said in Nazareth in Scripture is, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Jesus was adopted. So if you're adopted, Jesus was too, by his earthly father, Joseph. So those are all things Jesus knew that he knew very well. Jesus was also a minority. You got to remember, the Jews were not the majority culture. The majority culture were Romans. And Romans ran the was a minority. As a matter of fact, culturally speaking, when I say culturally speaking, where Jesus was in region, Jesus would have been Asian, technically. So I'm saying when you look at Jesus, Jesus is not the Jesus that we're used to when you look at him culturally, ethnically, in Scripture. He looks he's a very different person. Jesus, again, was seen as an insurrectionist. Jesus was a carpenter. Jesus didn't have some glamorous job. Jesus was just a carpenter. So when you look at Jesus' life, when you talk about separating yourself apart, there are those of us who act like we won't go somewhere on earth. Jesus left heaven to come here. We are like heaven, like earth is one step down from heaven. No, like this is earth, and like this is heaven, and earth is somewhere on the other side of the world. Like that's the way that works. But Jesus came down in order that you and I might know who he is. That's the love God has for you. Naturally, my question is, and time will tell, do you have that kind of love for those around you? Or is it, no man, I'm not going over there to that dorm because I'm not going over there to talk to those people because if we are always around people who are exactly like us, then we cannot keep this command in verse 3 and verse 4. There's no way we can do what Jesus did. Jesus hung out with lost folk. He hung out with drunkards. He hung out with all of the people who the Pharisees and religious people said, why are you hanging out with them? And if you're going to be anything like Jesus, that same thing is going to have to be true of you. Let me tell you something. If everybody at Elon thinks very, very highly of you, that might be a problem. If you're not the center of controversy based upon the way that you live, and that might be a problem. Because at the end of the day, that was Jesus' life. Everywhere he went, there was a controversy. There were those who really loved him and recognized that he was doing everything he could to help the poor and the marginalized. And there were those who hated them because that came up against everything they were trying to do to take advantage of the poor and the marginalized. I said last night, there's no such thing as that's none of my business, but there are a lot of us in this room that we don't care anything about the homeless. We don't even think about it. We don't care anything about the hungry. We always trying to help somebody in Uganda versus help somebody in Greensboro. Even though it's right down the street. So what I need you to understand is that's not how God works. So in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, the Bible says you receive power after that the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Judea, in Jerusalem, and Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the earth. What he was saying is, you're going to do that where you live, you're going to do that in the next town over, you're going to do that in this region, and then you're going to do that in the places where you're not supposed to go, and beyond. To infinity and beyond. That's not the Christian life that you're expecting to live. Let me go back to the last couple of questions I've asked you. Are you sure you're a believer? I mean, we say we want to be like Jesus. We don't want to be like Jesus. We don't want to be like Job, much less Jesus. We don't really want the life that Jesus. We want to walk on water, but we don't want the whole Pharisees trying to kill us part. We want to feed another 5,000, but let me tell you something. In order for a miracle to happen, you got to live in such a way that a miracle is necessary. Everybody wants to feed another 5,000. Nobody wants to be hungry. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Like everybody wants the Red Sea to be split. Nobody wants Pharaoh chasing them. The Red Sea don't need to be split if Pharaoh's not chasing them. Everybody wants the miracle. Nobody wants the problem. Miracles are born out of problems. This world has a lot of problems. My question is, are you ready to see the miracle or are you not? Are you longing for the miracle without having to do anything with the problem? Jesus hurt every day. That's the thing that God continues to remind me of. It's not like Jesus lived every day happy-go-lucky and waiting until life was over. He hurt every day watching people suffer. And he didn't heal everybody. The Bible says here, no one who abides in him keeps on sinning. What does that mean? Does that mean that I will never sin again? Not necessarily. What it also means is what he said in chapter 1. That means I'm not continuing to practice the darkness or practice the hiding. It means I confess my sin when I do sin, but I also seek to change. It's not like I just keep doing this thing and go, oh, well, this is my vice. Everybody got something. No, there's this desire to get away from whatever that is. And there are many of us that are not fighting for that. The Bible then says these words, no one who keeps on sinning has either seen him or known him. Little children, let no one deceive you. Whoever practices righteousness is righteous as he is righteous. Whoever makes a practice of sinning is of the devil, for the devil has been sinning from the beginning. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. Jesus is in your life to get rid of that stuff. The Bible then says, no one born of God makes a practice of sinning, for God's seed abides in him, and he cannot keep on sinning because he's been born of God. By this it is evident who are the children of God, listen, and who are the children of the devil. Everybody ain't God's child. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is the one who does not love his brother. Notice, for John and for Scripture, love, righteousness, and love go together. So you can't say, I really love God if you're not loving the people around you. It doesn't work like that. You can't say, I love God. Take care of the homeless. What's wrong with you? I'm not taking care of the homeless people. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work. I love God, but no, I'm not going, I don't, it's none of my business. Like the sex slave trade, that's none of my business. Oh, these homeless people that are right down the street in Greensboro, that's none of my business. If you're from Nashville, which is one of the, most, and it's crazy. On one hand, all those superstars live there. On another, there are more homeless people there than just about anywhere. I'm here to tell you that oftentimes what we do is look up here and we forget about all the people that have been marginalized. There are many of us going, man, I'm not even a minority. I can't do nothing over there. I don't understand that struggle. I don't know what's going on. Kendra and I were talking this morning. It was just a fun conversation. At times we look at other people and we go, no, that dude is he's a good dude. We have no clue what's going on internally. No clue what's going on internally. As a matter of fact, there would be people who would look at her father and would say, oh man, that dude's a good dude. Oh really? Because he's disowned his daughter, and it's because her husband's black. So as good a dude as he is, he's also racist. And there are tons of people who are like that. That we go, oh, they decent people. Oh, but they racist. But we cool with that. Oh, if their child tried to marry somebody outside their race, they'd be angry, but they're decent people. No, the reality is, from Jump Street, from birth, we're all sinners. And what makes me want to vomit in my own mouth is we keep horizontally looking at this thing going, well, at least they're not Joseph Stalin. That doesn't make them good. Just because we're less disobedient doesn't mean we're obedient. And I need you to understand that. Less disobedience doesn't equal obedience. It's still lawlessness. So he ends here by telling us to love one another, and he gives us how. This is point number 3, and the last thing I'm going to leave you with. Time will tell if we look at the love, if we practice the purity, and last of all, if we keep the commandment. The greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God. Second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. This is what he says. This is the message that you've heard from the beginning, that we love one another. We should not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his own deeds were evil and his brother's righteous. Now, before you go, look, man, I ain't trying to kill nobody. Jesus said to have anger in your heart against somebody without a legitimate cause, that is a godly cause, is the equivalent of murder. He says that in Matthew chapter 5. So there are many of us who go, no, I ain't trying to kill nobody, but if looks could kill, many of us would have already mowed down a whole field of people. The thing that you need to understand is it's easy to say, I'm not trying to kill nobody, I'm not like Cain, I'm not trying to kill my brother. But at the same time, what might be the case is when you see the righteousness of some Christian who's asking every question and pushing you to do that which Jesus did, if you find yourself getting angry because you find yourself inadequate, that's what John's talking about. It says, do not be surprised, brothers, that the world hates you. If you right now are not resonating with that, it might be that the world doesn't hate you. It might be that the world sees you as it sees itself, because you're not pushing the envelope like Jesus did. But he says, don't be surprised when the world hates you. We know that we have passed out from death to life because we love the brothers. Whoever does not love abides in death. Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer, and you know that no murderer has eternal life abiding in him. By this we know love, that he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. We ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. We ought to lay down our lives. That means I don't have a right to myself. Folks, again, I want to leave you with this challenge. God did not put you at Elon to get an education. I don't care what your mama told you. I don't care what your daddy told you. I don't care what anybody, he didn't put you there to get an education. He could have educated you anywhere. He put you there for a greater purpose. To know what that purpose is and live that purpose out is ultimately investing in the life to come and not in this one. But if somebody has lied to you and told you it's all about getting all that you can in this life is going to end. That's the equivalent of somebody saying you do everything you can to make your dorm room, your freshman year, the dopest place on the entire campus. That would be stupid to waste all of your money on posters and signs and like halogen lights and black lights all up in your room just to make it the dopest, because it's all got to come down. It all goes back in the box. One day I was playing Payday with my girls. I love the game Payday. They made a new one, and the new one is so different than the old one. Long story short, I was killing it. I had like $75,000 playing Payday in 6 months. It was awesome. You know at the end of the game, it all had to go back in the box. And then we had to start over. Last time I played payday with my kids, I had $2,000. $2,000, right? Remember, one time $75,000, the next time $2,000. Jada's just rolling in $10,000 bills, and I got $2,000 in my name. I'm like, this is terrible. This is how most people do life. You invest all that you can on earth. You have nothing to show for it in heaven. I'd a whole lot rather invest everything in. Listen, only one thing is going to heaven, and that's people. Your car ain't going to heaven. Your job ain't going to heaven. Money ain't going to heaven. People are going to heaven. You better make sure that's your chief investment. Because if it's not, you're going to show up in heaven, and you'll have nothing to show for what you did on earth. Last thing that the text says in verses 16 through the end of it, or verses 17 and 18 through the end of it. If anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet he closes off his heart against him, how does the love of God abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. Don't write a check with your mouth that your behind can't cash. Don't just talk about it, be about it. And time will tell. You could easily, over this weekend, have a one-night stand with Jesus and go, I love Jesus, and go home and not take care of anybody. I was telling somebody last night, there are people who are in college and they go, yeah, man, I'm a Christian. I don't go to the parties. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do none of that stuff. I don't even hang out with them people. That might be a problem because Jesus did hang out with them. Now, I'm not saying that you got to go to the parties and you got to drink, but I know a girl that I was so proud of her. I know another dude that I wrote his statement for him getting into his fraternity. I was so proud of him. He prayed and the Lord called him to join a fraternity, which there were a lot of Christians not happy about. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be completely honest with you, when he joined the fraternity, I thought, oh snap, this is not a good idea. But one of the reasons both this dude and this girl that I know joined the fraternity is they said, man, we just know people go get hammered every weekend. Girls get raped while they're drunk. Dudes go do really dumb things when they're drunk. People drive home drunk. And I'm just tired of seeing people get hurt. So I'm going to go to every party. I'm going to be the designated driver for these people. And I'm going to make sure they get home safely. I talked to this one girl one night, and she was in a sorority, and all she would do, she'd go to every party, she wouldn't drink it all, she'd share the gospel with people, she'd take the drunk girls home, she'd make sure they would get home safely. She would make sure that they were dressed appropriately the entire time, and nobody mistreated her. Tell me that ain't like Jesus. And there are many of you who go, I'm going to stay away from the place. And I'm not mad at you. If you stay away from, I'm not saying you sin if you stay away from the place. What I'm saying is, what makes me so sick is there are so many Christians who get mad at me because I don't drink. Is that a problem? What's so bad about that? The reality is, all I'm trying to do is keep a sober mind. Will I go to places where people drink to share the gospel with them? Absolutely. Why? Because Jesus did that. But there are many of us who are so afraid of the stigma that we're going to get. Jesus just wasn't afraid of the stigma. Jesus only had to get the approval of one person. That was God his Father. My question is, whose approval are you looking for? If you get God's approval, does the world's matter? Let me take that a step further. If you get God's approval, does the American Christian church matter? I'm not tripping. I recognize that because of some of my views, there will be people who don't like them that are pretty close to me. And they may say something. That's okay. That's who Jesus was. And ultimately, Jesus wasn't like, I got to keep my job, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut. That's the way Jesus worked. Here's the last thing. The Bible says, by this, we know that we are of the truth and reassure our heart before him. Whenever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart and he knows everything. Beloved, if our heart does not condemn us, we can have confidence before God. And whatever we ask, we receive from him because we keep his commandments and we do what pleases him. This is his commandment, that we believe in the name of his Son, Jesus Christ, and love one another just as he commanded us. Whoever keeps his commandments abide in God and God in him. And by this we know that he abides in us, by the Spirit whom he has given us. All he's saying is, if you really want to know whether or not you love God, just look at whether or not you love people. If you really want to know whether or not you love God, just look at whether or not you're separating yourself from the world, or if you're loving the world and allowing the world to love you. If you really want to know if you have a relationship with God, are you keeping his commandments or not? And his number one commandment is love. Are you seeking to take care of the poor and the marginalized and the fatherless and the widow, the oppressed? Or are you trying to make friends with all of the people that can? So Jesus said this in Matthew 5. How hard is it to make friends with the people that can do something for you? That's not hard. Lost people do that. It ain't easy to love the people who love you. It's a little bit harder to love the people who don't love you. So I'm going to return to what I said last night about Donald Trump, for example. There are people who will blast our president, which again is wrong biblically because he's our commander-in-chief. here's my issue. Don't you dare, and I'm talking to me too, don't you dare disrespect our president if you're not going to daily pray for him. I mean, if you're really going to love God, pray for Donald Trump daily. Pray that God will move in his heart. Pray that God will work in his heart. Pray that God will allow him to see who God is in such a way that it changes his heart. But don't be that person that's going to sit here and talk about something if you ain't going to pray about it. If you ain't going to sit in front of God and weep and go, God, you got to do something about this because I don't know what to do. Don't you dare talk about some Christian leader. Don't you dare talk about some secular leader if you're not going to pray for him all the time. Don't you dare talk about that professor with the jacked up toupee that's mean as all get out and just wants to show everybody how intelligent he is if you're not going to pray for him every day. We do that all the time. I'm saying if we really are going to love people, what we need to do, instead of talking about that lady that I saw this morning that my wife and I ended up having a conversation about, I should pray for that lady. I had that whole conversation with my wife, a good 15-minute conversation with my wife. Didn't pray for that lady once. I'm literally convicted at this moment as I'm preaching to you right now, going, I should pray for that lady. How dare I sit there and talk like that? I should pray for the lady. And just pray that God would allow her to find her value and identity and significance in him and not in how she's dressed. Father, in the name of Jesus, would you allow us to understand that many of us are missing that mark. I'm missing that mark. I get it. That there are so many times where I'm frustrated with the things that I see happening, but really I'm not doing anything about it. And Lord, the question is not, what should I do? The first question I need to be answering is, why didn't I do that first? And the reality is oftentimes I don't do it first because that's going to hurt. I don't love the marginalized or the poor, the oppressed, the orphan, and the widow first because that hurts.